everyone, welcome back to some more fun with the violin, I hope. Today we're going to answer a question that every violinist has on a regular basis, and that is, how can I make progress more quickly during my practice sessions? There's only so much time in a day with everything else going on in your life, like work, school, kids, and so on. So when you do finally get the chance to practice, you want to make the most of that time and find ways to maximize your progress. Beyond the classic practice tips that you've probably already heard from me by now, there are two other tips that I want to walk you through that I personally use all the time. And all you have to do is incorporate some listening and play along exercises into your practice routine. It's honestly very simple to incorporate both of these things, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a really neat way in just a minute here. But this is the approach that I've been taking for a long time during a lot of my practice routines, and it's something that I think has really helped me make progress faster with really any song that I'm learning, as well as something that helped me develop my ability to play by ear so well. Now, listening is about as simple as it sounds. You just want to listen to as much of the music that you're practicing as possible to really absorb all of that into your mind and to help you identify when you're playing something correctly or incorrectly. I'm sure some of you have heard of the Suzuki method, and while I didn't learn the violin with a licensed Suzuki teacher, I did still play through all of the Suzuki books with my teacher and listened over and over again to the audio CDs that came with each of those books. My mom would bring them in the car with us, and we'd be listening to them when we were out going to the grocery store or running any other types of errands. And that was incredibly helpful to how I learned the violin when I was younger. It really just helps you establish that mind and muscle connection to be able to learn those songs faster because of all the listening that you've been doing. And this isn't just something for beginners. The more often you can listen to recordings of the songs that you're trying to learn, the easier it'll be for you to learn them. The second tip to incorporate some play-along exercises takes a little bit more effort because you first need to find some recordings of whatever it is you're practicing to play along with, which nowadays shouldn't be too difficult with YouTube, Spotify, and everything else. But the tricky part here is that these recordings are always going to play at a fixed tempo, so they're not really going to be easy to practice with as a learning tool because you'll probably only be able to play along with those tracks once you've already been practicing them slowly on your own and have really worked to get them up to whatever speed the recording is at. But there is something out there that I've only recently started trying out that really puts these two tips of listening and practicing with play-along tracks together in a way that I think is insanely helpful to any musician who's serious about trying to get more out of their practice sessions. And that thing is this app called TomPlay. And full disclosure here, TomPlay is sponsoring this video, but I can honestly recommend this app very enthusiastically as an awesome practice tool and something that I wish I had access to sooner. All right, so what is TomPlay? TomPlay basically describes itself as interactive sheet music. So what that means is that beyond just being able to access whatever sheet music they're offering in their digital library, which is somewhere around 40,000 pieces, you can listen and play along with that sheet music with their high quality play along tracks. You can choose to play along with just your instruments part, your instrument and the accompaniment part together, or just the accompaniment part. And you can adjust the tempo for everything to make it accessible for your level of playing, which is something that I think makes this such a unique and powerful practice tool. Usually play-along tracks are at a fixed tempo, so having that ability to adjust the tempo up or down to suit your level is really nice. I'm sure you've already heard me say how important it is to practice slowly first and with something like a metronome. So TomPlay allows you to practice slowly first and bump up the speed just like a metronome would, but it's just so much nicer playing with a play-along track than it is with a metronome, at least in my opinion. I just personally have a really hard time enjoying practicing with a metronome. I still do it, but it's just never fun. They do have a metronome built into the TomPlay app as well, but I'd much rather just play along with a play-along track instead. It's also super easy to loop or isolate parts for more precise practicing. If you're just working on a couple of lines of a song, it's so much easier to use the reference audio to listen to in something like TomPlay than it would be to try and keep looping back to that spot in an audio recording on your phone or something else like that. And having the ability to isolate just a solo violin part is a lot different than listening to an entire song with all of the parts playing all at once. It just makes it a lot easier to hear exactly what the violin is doing when it's isolated like that. And honestly, the sound quality of the recordings is very impressive. For all the different violin songs I looked at, they're actually using studio recordings for both the accompaniment and the solo violin part. Sometimes the accompaniment is piano and sometimes it's actually a full orchestra, which is honestly really fun to practice along with. I also definitely recommend listening to other interpretations of these songs as well whenever you're learning them, because I just think that's good practice. But I wanted to point out that the recordings within TomPlay are actually really great, not just from a practicing standpoint, but also from a listening standpoint as well, which is really nice. So I have my TomPlay app opened here on my iPad. You're gonna see that on the screen so you can follow along. I just wanted to show you the play along feature because it's really neat. So I'm gonna play a little bit of a song called Thais for you, and this is just practice, so I just wanted you to see how this feature works. So you guys can see how much more engaging that is and nice to practice with the piano part as opposed to a metronome. You can see that the app has a playhead that scrolls along in real time when you're playing, so you always know where you're at in the music. But if you're someone who prefers playing from physical sheet music, you can print your sheet music off from within your TomPlay account. I noticed that some of the violin arrangements have very different bowings or articulations than the versions that I'm used to playing. And what you can do is actually add in your own bowings, fingerings, and so on within their editor and just use that, or you could print out your own unique version of the song if you want to as well. Of course, you could also just use a familiar arrangement of the song if you already have the sheet music for it, and then still use the app to practice with their play along track or reference the audio whenever you need to. But that's just a really nice extra feature if you don't already own a lot of sheet music. And speaking of, their catalog of sheet music is really extensive for all of the instruments that they offer sheets for, and I was pretty surprised at how much they have for the violin. They have a really great selection of classical pieces as well as tons of etudes and exercises, and they have a lot of other types of music like film music, pop, and rock, and most of their arrangements are available for all levels of playing, from beginner to advanced versions. So that's pretty cool too, because sometimes the original version of a song might be too advanced for beginners, but it's still something they want to play, so it's really nice to have some options whether you're looking for a challenge or you're just playing for fun. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with this app that I'm not even mentioning here, but in my opinion, I feel like the main advantage of using TomPlay for practicing is the ability to first listen and hear whatever you're practicing is supposed to sound like and be able to reference that, and then having all of those play along tracks and the ability to change the tempo of them. It's honestly such a powerful practice tool to be able to listen and play along with everything that you're practicing. And having everything together in an app like this just saves a lot of time because you don't have to go around trying to piece all of these things together separately on your own. It's all just here within the app. When I was growing up, I could only listen to the very limited songs that were available at the time, like whatever was found on the Suzuki CDs that I mentioned earlier, and then of course professional recordings, but I didn't know of any professional recordings of beginner or intermediate level violin songs, and I couldn't find any recordings of etudes and exercises back when I was younger. So I just had to rely on figuring it out myself or waiting until my lesson to ask my teacher if I got stuck on something. And that was always kind of disheartening, feeling like I didn't know for sure if what I was practicing was correct. So I do feel like TomPlay is a really neat resource, even if you're just using it to quickly reference for correctness for how something should be played. Now, as far as how often I think you need to practice like this to see benefits, I think that you should be listening to whatever music you're learning as often as you can. Obviously within reason, you don't have to have it on all day or anything like that, but just listen as much as you reasonably can, and then honestly using the play along feature even once a week could be hugely beneficial. I don't think that you need to do that every single time you practice, because you also just want to work on developing your ear apart from playing along with tracks all the time too. I also know that it can kind of feel stressful sometimes to always practice with a metronome or a play along track, so you don't want it to get to the point where you're actually dreading your practice sessions because it now feels more stressful with that. So just find the balance that works for you and know that you'll probably see some great results if you're incorporating this type of practice into your routine maybe a couple couple of times a week. Now, can you get the benefits of listening and practicing with play-along tracks without TomPlay? Of course. Like I said, I didn't have access to anything like this back in the day when I was starting out, and I still was able to piece together things to make these tips work for me in my practice sessions. But when time is of the essence and you're really looking to make the most of whatever limited time you do have to practice, I do feel like TomPlay is something that is well worth the price. If you guys are interested in giving it a try, you can try it out for free for 14 days. I have a link in the description below for that. Like I said, I've used this kind of listening and play along method to practice a ton over the years, and I think that it's had a lot to do with how well I'm able to play by ear and identify mistakes in my own playing, and that's always helped lead to faster progress on whatever I'm practicing. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and found these practice tips to be helpful, and I'll see you again soon in the next video.